Okay, so this week is Parshas Tetzaveh, and Tetzaveh starts off with Hashem speaking to Moshe. He's saying, Atah Tetzaveh, you should command the children of Israel that they should bring Shemen Lama'ar, pure olive oil. And the oil that they would bring would be this oil that's crushed. The first little bit of when you crush olives, that first little bit is the most pure part. This is what's used to light the menorah of the Mishkan. We learned in last week's Parsha that God was saying, you should make for me a Mishkan, make for me a tabernacle, v'shachanti b'socham, and I will dwell within, and instead of saying within it, it says within you, and plural you, within each and every one of us. So each and every one of us, God is dwelling within us. We're all a Mishkan Ma'at, this little Mishkan. But in Parshas Tetzaveh is where we see, this is the one Parsha in the whole Torah since Moshe was born, except for some Parshas in Devarim in which it's all in first person. But this is the one Parsha that his name is not mentioned. His name is not mentioned throughout the entire Parsha.
Moshe, you mean?
Moshe. You don't see Moshe at all. And the reason why he's not named here, does anyone know?
He, was it because God wanted to destroy the Jewish people, and he said, if you do, then take my name out?
Exactly. After the Jewish people made the golden calf, he said, Mechenina misifracha. If you want to destroy them, he says to God, then erase me from your book. I don't want any part of it. God was saying, I'm going to punish the Jewish people, I'll kill them out, and I'll start over with you. And he says, no way. If that's so, Mechenina, erase me from your book. And so whatever a tzaddik says actually happens, and this happens in this week's Torah portion where Moshe is erased. His name is not there at all in the entire Parsha. Now, it would seem like, okay, he's erased because this is what he said. But really, this is where you see the essence of Moshe, because it starts with Atah Tetzaveh. You should command the Jewish people. And when it talks about you, when we say a name of a person, there's characteristics of the name. We all have names, and the names refer to various characteristics of our soul, various parts of our soul. And that's why when someone is sick, we call them by their name to wake them up, to arouse them. That's why we add a name. When someone is also sick, we want to give them another aspect of life, another aspect of something positive to give them more strength. So the name refers to specific qualities and characteristics of the person. But when I say you, when I talk about you, when I say the word you, I'm pointing at you, I'm looking at you, I'm saying you, I'm talking about you, the essence of the person. Not the you that's this name that, to some people she's Chana, to some people she's Mrs. Weisberg, to some people she's Rebbitzin, to some people she's the wife of Isser. Everyone has these different parts of them. But when I say you, I'm talking to you, the essential person, the essential part of yourself. And that's what this week's Parsha has. It has Moshe at his essential self, that quintessential person of who he was. And what was his essential self? What was this characteristic of Moshe that's so evident in this week's Torah portion? His tremendous love for the Jewish people. His love for this nation, that he was ready to be erased from this book in order to save his people. So Moshe is even more present in this week's Torah portion. What part of him? The essential part of him, the real part of him, not the Moshe that means that I've taken him out of the water, or the Moshe that was the light that came into the world, or all these things. No, what is the essence of Moshe? This tremendous love that he had for the Jewish people. And the first words of the portion is Atah Tetzaveh, you should command the Jewish people. When the word command, the word Tetzaveh, which means command, is like the word mitzvah, which means command, but it also means bond. Like with a mitzvah, we are bonded, we are connected to Hashem. That's how we connect to God. By doing mitzvah, God shows us, you want to connect to me? This is how you can connect to me. I'm teaching you how to connect to me by bonding with me by doing this and this mitzvah. And so what God is also saying to Moshe is, Atah Tetzaveh, you should be bonded. You will be bonded with the Jewish people. You will be this eternal bond with the Jewish people, because each and every one of us has a little spark of Moshe If you know the song from 8th Day, the little Moses with you, you know, every Jew has that little Moses in him, because each and every one of us has that. It's called Bashtusa Shel Moshe, this little spark of Moshe in each of us, and that's that part of us that wants to do only the good things that we want to do. So God is saying, this is the quintessential part of Moshe that's not seen in this week's parsha, but is seen even more. This tremendous love, the essential part of Moshe is this tremendous love of Moshe, and this part of Moshe that's really bonding with each and every person, that part of us that wants to do only the good parts. And how do we really sometimes release that part of us? Through the crushing. We have to take that olive and crush it. It's through sometimes as those moments that feel so crushing, that we're tested to our limit, that the real part of us, that essential part of us, that deep down part of us, that part of us that really expresses who we are, that's when it comes out. When you crush a person, that's when you see who they really are. And I think that we've seen it with the stories that have come out from these hostages. You've just seen it so clearly that they've been through the worst crushing times, but you see the Yiddishkeit that comes out. And, you know, I was just reading a few stories, for example. I'll give you an example, the humility and the connection to Judaism when they didn't have it. I'll give you a few examples that I was reading. Keith Siegel, who was released after 484 days. He's originally from Chapel Hills, North Carolina. He moved to Israel. He was not religious. He said he started saying Shema in Gaza, right? And he says he's lying there, he's hungry, he's starving, and they give him this pita that's a burnt pita, and the only blessing that he remembers is the blessing that's said on bread, the hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And he starts saying that on the pita. And he says, and one day he's watching something on the news, and he sees somebody saying a bracha, a bracha of mizonot. And when he hears the bracha of mizonot, he says, okay, if I have anything else besides for the pita, I'm going to say the mizonot. This is what he's thinking about. He says when he came out, after he returned, they asked him, what would you like for your first Shabbat? Because he came out. And he said, I want a kippah and a kiddush cup.
Oh, I thought who wanted to fill it?
Well, this was on
Somebody
Shabbos,
else
right?
wanted to
This is
fill
on
it.
Shabbos. All I want is a kippah and a kiddush cup.
That's right.
Omer Shem Tov, who just was released after 505 days. Again, his family did not observe Shabbos, but they did do a Shabbat dinner. And he was the one that usually made Kiddush at that Shabbat dinner. He says when he was in Gaza, they brought him this bottle of grape juice. For some reason, they had a bottle of grape juice. And the hostages saved this bottle of grape juice to use for Shabbat. They had some pretzels once that they were given that were very salty. They scraped off the salt from the pretzels, saved it, and this is what they would dip their pita that they were given on like unbelievable. And in his first post, when he came out, he said, when his mother and he also decided to keep Shabbat. When he would make the kiddush, he would put a piece of toilet paper on his head as his head covering. And they would give him, he was in a very dark place, they gave the hostages flashlights to use so that they could see. And he refused to use his on Shabbat because he was keeping Shabbat. And his mother as well started keeping Shabbat when he was in prison, when he was in Gaza, and when he came out, the first post that he wrote is, Creator of the world, thank you for being with me for every moment.
Beautiful.
Like unbelievable. Eli Sharabi, another example, he said Shema every day, and he was interviewed and he was asked, is God in the tunnels of Gaza? And he said, you have to feel this thing that's with you, this force that's with you there. Yarden Bibas also was recently just released. And he was actually told that if he converts to Islam,
Right.
they'll treat him better.
Yeah.
And he said, I was born a Jew and I will die a Jew. And they didn't give him food for 2 days after that. They treated him, he was told, if you convert, you'll be treated better. They didn't give him food for 2 days after that, but he refused to convert in any shape or form. When you hear these stories, this is really,
You can't believe that it's there.
it's
Really
this,
is.
this is of biblical proportions, exactly. This is like stories of biblical proportions where you're hearing really, and this is not people who are quote unquote religious. This is people, this is how you see the Pintala Neshama, that part of the Neshama that comes out, that is just always connected to God, that just refuses to be distant from God. And I found it really incredible. At the Kinnis HaShluchos, I was actually interviewing Vicky Cohen, the mother of Nimrod, who is still there. And it was unbelievable what she was saying. You know, she's a woman who's wearing pads. She's not religious. Her hair's not covered. And she says, you know, I believe that the hostages were chosen by God. Their soul was chosen. And before they came to the world, they agreed to be a part of this mission that I don't know why it was.
Wow.
And they agreed to be this, and she says, and the families too, you know, agreed that this is what, and she's like, I don't know why or what, but this is a mission. And I was listening as well to Rachel Poland Goldberg, who also said something similar. She said, you know, neither me nor Hirsch we're not saints, and we're not sinners. We're not terrible sinners. So this was not a punishment, but I see it as part of this greater tapestry of what's happening. I don't understand it, why it's happening, but I see that there's a reason and there's a purpose to it. And you know, you look at these people and you could just say these are holy neshamas. It's their neshama that's speaking. And this is what, you
They
know,
were at the wedding.
who was at the wedding?
The women that you just mentioned. Yeah, they were at the wedding.
Five to six hostages.
Yeah.
They came to your wedding?
Yes, they did.
Really?
Yeah.
It was
Oh my
amazing.
gosh,
Yeah, the
wow.
Husson's aunt is Hannah Kanterman from Yerushalayim.
Oh, I spoke to Chana, yes,
Yeah.
about doing an interview with her. Wow.
okay, so-
isn't that
was fun.
So
something?
the night before, Yossi's mother said, you know, I'm bringing 6 friends. Like, names, any? No? Okay, fine. At that point, like,
She
I'm
didn't even
done.
know till I told her, because I said, this woman came over to me, right? Remember you said the hospital, they're here? And I'm like, yeah, remember we were talking.
Uh-huh.
So
Wow.
somebody came over to
Yeah.
our table
Wow.
and asked me if I would go, and I don't know how she figured me, but, you know, figured I would, you know, ask, you know, if I would go and maybe a couple of other people, as soon as they come in, would you talk to them, make it, you know, and I'm like, yeah, like,
Wow.
you know, so of course we went over to, a couple of us went over to the table, you know, yeah, and it was that mother and Rachel, and then I took a picture with all of them. Yeah, it was just.
Wow. Okay, so after we finish, remind me that I have another story from her to tell you. Okay.
I feel so bad because I wanted to stay. I wanted to stay so bad. Like after the chuppah, you know how like you're there and you're like, I don't want to go.
Right.
I don't want to go. And I was going downstairs and I saw your card. Your card was still there.
Yeah,
And
I
I
saw
said,
that too.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw
I
it
was
also.
like, oh my gosh, everybody is here. And I had such severe FOMO. I was like, what was I doing?
I know I have that too.
It was just awful, and I came home and I just felt terrible. And then she posted a picture because I sent her a picture, and she posted a picture, and I was like, why? Why wasn't I there? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I'll tell you an interesting story after, but what happened with Chani. And after, okay, so this is what I see. Yeah, it was very interesting. This is what I see in this week's Torah portion. These holy people, which are the Jewish people, and you know, this is really, you know, there are things sometimes that really show and prove the eternity of the Torah. And if you listen to this week's interview with Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, we're talking about anti-Semitism. And he says anti-Semitism shows the eternity of the Jewish people. That's what shows. And when you listen to when I did it with Nissim Black, he said the reason why he converted to Judaism is because he started learning about the Holocaust. And that made him think, wow, this is what the Torah talks about. This is what the biblical prophecies are all about, the eternity of the Jewish people. And it is when you see these crushing circumstances that you see sometimes this beauty of the soul That we shouldn't need these crushing circumstances to bring it out, but this is what you see. And this is in this week's Torah portion as well, where the Rebbe talks about there's two altars in the Mishkan. There's an outer altar and an inner altar. The outer altar was made out of, anyone know? So one was made out of gold, that's the inner altar. And then the outer altar was made out of choshes, which is copper. It was made out of copper. And the question that's asked about these two altars is, were they able to become tameh? The word tameh means impure, but it's a ritual impurity. In Judaism, anything that touches a dead body, like if there's a dead body in a room, we become ritually impure. If you touch it, you become. And nowadays, all of us are ritually impure because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash and we don't have any form of becoming pure. But there's various different forms of impurity that we are not allowed to go into the Beit HaMikdash or the Mishkan when you are impure. It doesn't mean dirty. Like Nidah is a form of impurity where we go to the mikvah. When we have our period, we go to the mikvah and we become pure again. It doesn't mean dirty. It means a certain spiritual, ritually impure. So the question is, these two mizbeachs, can they become ritually impure? Can they become tameh? And I mean, they're holding all these animals that are on them. There's different things that might touch them. Can they become impure? And the answer is no, they can't become impure. And the question is, why can't they become impure? And the answer that's given is, there's two answers that are given. There's Rabbi Elazar ben Harkanas, who says that since they're called the Mizbeach of Adamah, the Mizbeach from the ground, because they were made with wood, but they were filled with earth. Since they were made, they're called Adamah, ground. We know that things that are made out of the ground, things out of like ceramics and stuff like that, don't become ritually impure. The ground does not become ritually impure. So these things, these two mizbechot, do not become ritually impure. There's another opinion, and that's by the sages, that say no. They say the reason why they don't become ritually impure is because they're made out of wood. They're made out of wood, and then they're covered with the copper or with the gold. And things that are, again, made out of wood does not become ritually impure. Anything that's made out of wood does not become ritually impure.
That's why you don't have to toivel them. Right?
Exactly,
Okay.
yes, okay. So this is what the law says. You know, this is the law in the Talmud, this is the discussion that's going on in the Talmud. And we know that everything that is in the Mishkan has a significance, not only in terms of on a basic level, but there's a lesson for us, a mystical lesson that's for us, and a lesson for all times, for every single generation, for all times, even today when we don't have the Mishkan. What is the lesson for us? The lesson for us about these two mizbeachs is that in every one of us, we said we are all a Mishkan. We said, make for me a mikdash, and I will dwell in you. We are all a little mikdash ma'at, this little sanctuary for God. Now, within the sanctuary, there are different elements, right? Within the Mishkan, there was all different kinds of sacred elements. There was the shulchan, the mizbeach, there was the menorah, there was a lot of different things that were there. From these sacred items that are in the Mishkan, some of these sacred items refer to sacred items of the person. What are the sacred items of the person? We are that Mishkan, we are that tabernacle, and the sacred items like the shulchan and like the menorah are things within us. What are sacred things within us? Our thoughts and our feelings. These are sacred to a human being. These are the treasures that we all have. Now, our treasures, our thoughts, and our feelings can sometimes become tameh. They could sometimes become impure. Sometimes we can have a thought that isn't a pure thought. Sometimes we can have a feeling that isn't a pure feeling. Our thoughts and our feelings, which are these sacred items of the human being, can sometimes become impure in what we think about, in what we feel, that it's not positively directed to God. So how do we purify these thoughts and these feelings? We have to bring it as a sacrifice on an altar for God. We have to sacrifice these feelings and these thoughts for God on the Mizbeach, which was where the sacrifices took place. Now, when we're talking about sacrificing ourselves for God, we might say, but okay, what about the whole person? Can the whole person become impure? Can we as Jews become impure? If we are that Mizbeach, can we become impure? And the answer is no, we cannot become impure. Why can't we become impure if we have impure thoughts or impure feelings? Why is it that we don't become impure? Because we are the Mizbeach, and the Mizbeach does not become impure. But why doesn't the Mizbeach become impure? So there's a difference of opinion on why doesn't the Mizbeach become impure. According to Rabbi Elazar ben Harkanis, who was an extremely humble person, it says he never used to say anything without giving credit to he only spoke what he learned from his teachers. He was a brilliant man, but only spoke what he learned from his teachers. So he says that the reason why the Mizbeach cannot become impure is because the Mizbeach is considered like earth. Like earth. It's made out of the earth and it's considered like earth. What does it mean when a person is considered like earth? It says, V'nafshi ka'afar lakol. My soul will be like the earth, meaning I am so humble. When a person is humble, they're like the earth, just like the earth is you step on it. A person who is humble is somebody who doesn't think of themselves as like, oh, me. You think of yourself in a very humble way, that it's not you that owns it, but it's God who owns it. So how is it that we are not in any way, the Jewish person, it does not become impure? Because of our humility, Rabbi Elazar says. Rabbi Elazar, who was this tremendously great, righteous person who was so humble, said the reason why the Jewish people don't become impure is because of their humility, their attachment to God in this humble, modest way. Now the sages say, hold on, that's a hard thing to always be so humble. That's a hard thing to expect from people. Rabbi Elazar was this very humble person, so yes, he was always humble. But it's hard to expect of people to always feel that humility. And of course, when a person is humble, it says God doesn't reject it. The leiv nishbar, that broken heart, God automatically accepts. When we come with humility to God, God automatically accepts it. But what if we're not always so humble? What if we're not feeling that humility always? So that's why the sages say that the reason why the Mizbeach cannot become impure is because the Mizbeach is made out of wood that's just covered over with nechoshes or zahav. It's just covered over with this gold and this copper. But the essence of it is wood. And the overlays are just the gold and the copper. And what does this mean? What does it mean when we talk about gold and copper? Gold and copper refers to, well, what kind of status does gold? Someone who's very rich. Gold is rich. What status is copper? Someone who's poor. Someone who's not rich. So there are times in life when we are rich, and this could be physically, materially, spiritually. When we are rich, and that richness could take us away from Torah. A person who could be so involved in material reality that they are distracted from Torah, or they're deviating from Torah because they're so involved in making their money and making the gold. So that's one way that a person could be taken away from being close to Torah and to Hashem. The other way that a person could be taken away or distracted from his closeness to Torah and Hashem is when we're so poor, when we have struggles, when we have difficulties in our lives, and we're so trying to make a living or so trying to overcome those challenges that just that make us feel so poor and so impoverished. So that might take us away, that might distract us from God. So we have two things: the richness, the feeling like everything is going so good, everything is going great in our lives, and we're just want to make more and more money physically or materially, or even just that feeling of haughtiness that everything's going so well. That could take us away from God. Or on the other side, that poverty, that impoverished feeling, that feeling of the overwhelming rush of life that we're not managing to make ends meet. It's so hard. That can also distract us and take us away from God. And so what do the sages say? These are just distractions. These are just the overlays, the gold overlay, the copper overlay. But look at the essence of the person. The essence of the person is made out of wood, and that can never get impure. The essence of the Jew is his soul, his neshama, his soul, which is always pure. And that part, you could be covered over with gold, you could be covered over with nechoshes, and this gold or this copper can retain impurity. Gold utensils or copper utensils can become ritually impure. But these are just the overlays. The essence of it is that it's made out of wood. And wood can never become impure. The essence of the Jew is his neshama, his beautiful, sparkling neshama. And that neshama can never, ever become detached or impure from God. And I think we see this so clearly in today's day and age, religious, not religious, a little bit more this way, a little bit more that way, right, left, who knows what label you put on that person. But you see that the neshama of the person is always connected. And this is really the message of Tetzaveh, where you see Moshe's essence, which is his love for the Jewish people, and how he confers that essence to us. He bonds with us and brings us that essence of that love for the Jewish people and that essence of who we are. And that is revealed through the two different kinds of altars in the Mishkan, how both of these altars cannot get impurity because our minds and our thoughts and our hearts, our feelings might become impure at times, but our essence never becomes impure because that is who we really are. And I think that's a message that we need to walk around with, realizing this is who we are as the Jewish people.